The Russian ruble has depreciated over 90% in the last 10 years. Just this year alone, I think high to low is like 65%. The Turkish lira did the same. Bitcoin is a lifeline to people in countries with really poor stewardship of their economy. And we should be thrilled that Russians can get some of their money in Bitcoin so they're not completely broke holding worthless rubles. Well, I think, let's say the dollar might be the same, right? I mean, I think the biggest thing that's happened in the last 10 years in lots of ways, maybe longer, is when Europe, the US said, hey, Russia, those reserves that you thought were yours, they're not really your reserves. So what does that mean? It means the dollar or treasuries as a risk-free asset isn't so risk-free. It's not risk-free if you're Russian, and maybe if you're Chinese, you're like, might not be risk-free either. And so I think we're entering in a world that's unknown, where people are going to struggle to figure out what is the reserve currency. The U.S. isn't going away, right? The dollar's not going away, but it's not going to be the sole place. And so I think you're going to see this hodgepodge of assets. Gold, certainly digital assets are going to be part of that bucket. The whole world's not going to flip to Bitcoin overnight, but you're going to see more and more people say, I want to have some of my money outside of the sovereign.
How do you deal with that debate, though? Because a lot of people are talking about the problem with cryptocurrency is that you can use it to circumvent these sanctions. On the other hand, people in the community are saying, that's the point, right? We don't want government censorship to be able to take away our property.
So let's talk big and small. There is zero chance the Russian government can use cryptocurrencies to circumvent, right? We're regulated by 25 different agencies, Galaxy. And I'm sure, FTX and Binance and the others have just as many. And so almost all crypto moves through exchanges. Those exchanges have KYC AML processes, just like TradeFi exchanges. And so, plus Bitcoin is a public blockchain. Way back we hired Mike Morell, who had run the CIA, we, Galaxy, and a few other companies, to do a study on Bitcoin. And he did like a 10 weeks exhaustive study with the security agencies, with the three-letter agencies, with crypto companies. And he came up with the thesis that if you were going to design a trap to catch criminals, it would look a lot like the Bitcoin blockchain. And so it's just, Elizabeth Warren is just wrong when she thinks you can use Bitcoin for Russia to say sanctions. And we're looking at it the wrong way. The Russian ruble has depreciated over 90% in the last 10 years. Just this year alone, I think high to low is like 65%. The Turkish lira did the same. Bitcoin is a lifeline to people in countries with really poor stewardship of their economy. And we should be thrilled that Russians can get some of their money in Bitcoin so they're not completely broke holding worthless rubles.
Well, that brings me to the question of what the use case is, because in the context we're talking about it, it's essentially as a replacement for fiat currencies. Is that how you view what the future of digital assets is? Listen, is it a store of value?
So digital assets is a big word, right? I think Bitcoin has this really beautiful lane of being digital gold or a store of value. Everyone has a human right to have the fruits of their labor stored somewhere. And if you don't trust your government's currency, traditionally we put it in diamonds or gold. This is the first really digital version of that. And so I think that's Bitcoin's use case. Now listen, there's also a lot of other digital assets. There's digital stable coins or digital dollars or euros. There's things, Ethereum, digital networks, NFTs, right? And so the revolution that's happening isn't just in one lane. But I think for Bitcoin, it really is a place you store value.
How important are the CBDCs, right? Because today when I saw the headline that the Saudis might start selling the Chinese oil in yuan, the first thing I thought about was, they're so far ahead of us with the digital yuan.
Yeah, so I think this is the biggest national security concern that every country should have. And as every citizen, you've got to understand that one CBDC and a stablecoin ain't the same thing, right? It all comes down to who controls them. And so if you look at the Chinese version, where it's a blockchain of one, right? It's complete, total transparency into every transaction you do. So you're giving up complete privacy, right? The version that we're pushing for, the blockchain community here in the US, what Brian Brooks pushed when he was the head of the OCC, was private companies running on a public blockchain, but those assets backed by assets held at Fed banks, right? So it's where your privacy goes. I was on a call literally with the central bank governor of Brazil at one point, and I was pointing out that their president didn't really like gay people. I just Googled Bolsonaro gay, and there's about 18 pages of pretty uncomfortable stuff. And so if you're gay in Brazil, you don't want your country knowing every last purchase you make. So where do we care about privacy? And this sounds nuanced, but it is the single most important part of understanding how important this fight of CBDCs is. Bitcoin went up a lot last year on this story of the Fed printing money forever. That's what pushed all risk assets up, right? We had this unbelievable amount of liquidity. And it came off because the Fed, Chairman Powell finally said, hey, I got to take this more seriously than I've been taking it, and I'm going to get hawkish. We're starting to see a little bit of a breakdown. I don't think Bitcoin can rally aggressively until we get a pause. And I would tell you that because Bitcoin's a narrative story. It's bringing people into a community. There are 150 million people into that community. Most are staying in it. Right? That's the 8th biggest country in the world. It's bigger than Russia. So Bitcoin holders are a bigger country if you think it's sovereignty than Russia. But to bring new people in, it's hard when their house is on fire. And right now, if you talk to any investor, Chinese stocks are cratering, tech stocks are cratering. Their mindset isn't like, let me see where I can find more risk. And so we're going to hit a pause. The war will end. Let's, pray to God. The Fed will go and we'll start saying, hey, we priced in the Fed. And once markets hit some equilibrium, I think you're going to see the narrative really take off.
So where would you set a target for year end this year and 5 years out?
Great question. Listen, I think like the other bull, Mike, the NASDAQ has further to go to the downside this year. I think literally the Fed hasn't even started hiking rates. They haven't started pulling liquidity from the system. And so I've the whole year thought we'd be a 30,000, 50,000 range in Bitcoin. Risk to the upside, not the downside. But I think, 5 years out, if Bitcoin's not at 500,000, I'm wrong on the adoption cycle, right? We see an adoption cycle that accelerates. Bitcoin grew so much faster last year, crypto grew, than the internet did its best years in the 90s. And so I see this going viral everywhere. If it's in the Mideast or in pension funds in the United States, all getting ready to participate.
Novogratz also talks about the demographics of investors in the digital asset space and how the space gives equal opportunities to people from all walks of life.
We have heard a number of mayors push for this. And, really since the beginning, there's been this kind of egalitarian, obviously libertarian feeling in the Bitcoin community. You mentioned 150 million people have now adopted it. But I never expected there to be so many, predominantly white male whales. And we really have seen that. Is that a problem?
Well, listen, white males own most of the money in the world. And so I would tell you that you would expect any new technology to have a lot of them in it. What's more promising is if you look at people of color as a percentage of people who participate, it's higher in blacks, it's higher in Hispanics. When I look at young versus old, right, this is a generational move. I cheekily say I identify as Gen Z. It's because it's a revolution of young people who looked up and said, I don't like the way the world's looking. Right? I'm losing faith. I'm losing trust. And we see trust breaking down everywhere. And so I think if you looked at young versus old, there's a much bigger representation in young. Certainly, there are more white whales than people of color whales because they started out with so much more, right? Blacks are 13% of the population. They own 1.5% of the wealth. And so it would have been shocking if that was the difference.
Mike, what about the idea that Bitcoin can be the great equalizer? If there's going to be a parallel financial system being created via new technology, do you have any evidence that it could be a more equal system?
Well, crypto gives everybody equal access, right? Anybody can participate in the Bitcoin network. I don't need to have a certain level of wealth. I don't need to be in a private equity or a venture fund. I can go on and I can participate. I can build on it. I can invest in it.
And DeFi is part of the big promise as well, right?
Same thing with DeFi, and quite frankly, same thing with NFT communities, right? What is the surprise to me this year is that NFTs have become the killer app of the blockchain. It's the first place we said, hey, we're using this outside of an experiment, outside of a sandbox. We're using it in real life. Artists are making money. Musicians are making money. Big brands are making money. And so I actually think it's the most exciting thing that's going on.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.